All right, good evening. Okay, I appointed you to vote. There's it. And we'll start with the public hearing, Quaker Farm Road Bridge replacement. I'll open the hearing.
I'm going to read the notice that was sent to the day paper, the legal ad. Dear Matt, please publish the following public notice for 2 insertions, Friday, December 2nd, 2022, and Friday, December 9th, 2022. Town of Groton, Inland Wetlands Agency, notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that the Inland Wetlands Agency will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 14th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in Community Room 2, Town Hall Annex, 134 Groton Long Point Road, and virtually via the Zoom platform for the purpose of receiving comments on the following. Inland Wetlands Agency 22-11 Quaker Farm Road. Application is to fill 187 square feet of inland wetland and to impact 415 square feet of inland wetlands. Activity is associated with the replacement of the existing Quaker Farm Road Bridge. Town of Groton, applicant and owner. On second insertion, please put this 9th date of December 2022.
Thank you, Eunice. The certificate of mailing.
We received those, right, certificates of mailings are all in order.
Okay. All right. Public hearing procedures. People are here if they want to comment. The applicant's going to present first. Then there will be time for public comment. I just ask you to state your name and residence and to keep your comments pertinent to wetlands items, traffic and other kinds of things. All right. You're ready to go?
All right, good evening, everybody. For the record, Greg Hanover, Director of Public Works for the Town of Groton, representing the applicant, Town of Groton, for the Quaker Farm Road Culvert Bridge replacement. I just want to give a brief background and then have Shelley Plude, who is with our consultant engineer with SLR, to go over the details of this project.
Is there a mic for him too?
That's on.
Is it?
Oh,
It doesn't seem like it, does it?
Tap it, just tap it to make sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's on.
Good.
Okay. Briefly, the culvert we're looking to replace consists of 2 5-foot diameter corrugated metal pipes. We don't have any records of when they're installed. Probably in the, I'm guessing 40s or 50s is about when these are put in.
You can pull it out if you want to. It's cordless.
I did look up in an old Veers Atlas from 1868 and found that this road actually existed back then. Haley Road actually went up and cut across where Quaker Farm is, then continued up Lambtown into Ledyard. So this crossing has been there for over 150 years. Obviously, it was a timber bridge or a rock stone culvert back then. So anyway, coming up to more recent history, in late 2017, I got a call from our highway guys. They were noticing some severe settlements out at this crossing. So I went out there, found that the corrugated metal pipes had actually either rotted away or failed, and they had sunk down into the stream bed, and it separated by about 4 or 5 inches from the stone culvert. And the whole road bed was undermined, and we determined that it was not a safe condition, so we closed the road down through traffic back in November 2017. It's been closed to traffic since. It took a little while to get some funding from the town to move forward with this project. We did receive funding in fiscal year ending 21 in the CIP for design work. We went through the qualifications-based selection process, and we ended up hiring SLR. And we signed a contract with them to start work in about April 2021. In this past budget season, FYE 23, we got funds approved for the construction. So that as of July 1st of this year, we have funds to move forward. We also applied to the Connecticut DOT local bridge program, and they did commit to fund 50% of this project. So that's kind of the background where we are. And Shelley will go through all the details of it. And I did want to state that, we do have a couple of easements we need to get from the property owner to the north, which is the Groton Open Space Association. Temporary and a permanent easement from them. We did get an acknowledgement from them, and it was in the agenda packet. They are aware of the project, and gave us a letter signed as such. And then just recently this week, we did receive an acknowledgement from the Housies, which are to the south, because we do need a temporary construction easement from them. So they did sign and acknowledge that. But we couldn't get that in the agenda packet because it just came in a few days ago. So I'll turn it over to John.
Bring up the presentation. So just for the record, Shelley Plude,
I'm
senior.
having a hard time hearing. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I can't
You can just pull that out if you want. You can pull it out. There you go.
Fancy. Is nice. Thank you. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sure. So my name is Shelley Plude, I'm a senior structural engineer with SLR Consulting. So balance my papers here.
Give me 1 second. Shelley, I'm just gonna
No problem.
make it up.
You can't hide the word.
Go ahead and just start on the first slide. So just a quick aerial overview of the project site. You can see, obviously, we have pretty expansive wetlands up and downstream of the culvert. That's largely, is this touchscreen?
Yep, sure is.
This is driven largely by the spillway that's downstream, and that'll show up on a subsequent slide, but just want to give you an aerial of what we're dealing with here. So we've got wetlands, pretty much up to the bottom of the embankment, on both sides. There's a couple of tributaries that come in. I believe this is a historic cranberry bog. At one point, this came up, in the NDDB screening, which you'll see a little bit later, but I'm gonna scroll to the next. So this is the FEMA flood map. We're in an A zone, so this is not a studied zone. There were no elevations associated with this floodplain. That spillway that I talked about is right here at the base of the floodplain. So it extends up. The existing culvert is hydraulically undersized, so based on the modeling, the roadway would overtop under today's conditions. The black hatching over on the side, that's the 500-year. But this is the regulatory floodplain for the Quaker Farm culvert. And just a little bit about what Greg was just saying. So you can see this is really very typical of this type of culvert. You start to have that corrosion along the water line that leads to section loss and fracture of the pipe. So the inlet ends of the pipes have started to collapse, creating that gap, which is allowing that roadway and bank material to continue sloughing out through that head wall. If you went out there recently, you can see that depression is continuing to worsen. So, at some point, these pipes will probably collapse entirely. So it's definitely going to create even more of a blockage than it is today. Just a couple of site photos. You can see that the wetlands that we have both up and downstream, fairly extensive. And then this is the spillway that I was referring to earlier. This is generally what governs the hydraulics in this area, and backs up all of that water to Quaker Farm Road and north. The culvert is a restriction on the water course, but this is the driving factor. And then I know that this will be a subject of discussion tonight. We're aware that there is a history of beaver activity in the preserve. Generally upstream, we didn't observe any beavers when our wetland soil scientists were out there. We didn't observe any in the immediate vicinity of the culvert, so it's hard to say if the debris that's in there is deliberate on the part of the beavers, or if this is a byproduct of their upstream activities just getting washed down and clogging the pipes, because that is another, sort of telltale condition for this type of culvert, is they are debris prone. But obviously, if you have beaver activity, it's just going to worsen.
Is that picture on the lower right looking at the north side?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that is the north side. So the flows are going into the pipes and everything's getting clogged, and it might be a little hard for you to see, but the debris is actually catching the edge of the pipe and bending it in.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's time. It's time for the culvert to be replaced. Yep. So this is our proposed design. I've got a couple other figures to show this in a little bit more detail. So we're taking those two 54-inch pipes, which are right about here. And the new structure is going to be a 26-foot clear span bridge. So you're going from about 9 feet of hydraulic width to 26 feet of hydraulic width for the channel. And that's driven by a couple of different factors. So obviously we have Army Corps and DEP permits that we have to get for this project as well. And they have their own sets of requirements. So one of the things they like to see is the new crossing spanning 1.2 times the bank full width of the channel. So the average full width of the channel when it's flowing, they want to take that width plus a little extra 20% so that you reduce the likelihood of debris and it provides a little more animal passage space through the new crossing. So our wetland soil scientists, when they came out and flagged this, also went up and downstream outside of the influence of the structure and of the dam to try and come up with that bankful measurement. So they took some field measurements, and that's part of the reason why we ended up with a 26-foot span. The other reason is to pass the 100-year design event. That's another requirement of the state and Army Corps. So this proposed structure will pass the 100-year storm with a foot of freeboard, in this case, relative to the low point of the road, which is off to the western side of the site. So the new bridge is going to be concrete abutments with pile foundations, because with the bigger opening, we do predict some amount of scour. So we're doing the deep foundations to rock to make sure that that doesn't become a problem in the future. And then the superstructure will be pre-stressed beams. So that should come together. It'll have a nice smooth bottom so that you won't have debris getting hung up in between any beams. It's going to be a smooth, continuous flow cord. And this is a summary of our impacts. So the purple is permanent impact below the ordinary high water line. So that the blue line here, that's the channel primarily, and then that tributary that's coming in from the side. So our permanent impacts really have to do with, we're including the pipes in those areas. DP and Army Corps ask us to include anything below ordinary high water, even if it's not natural channel bottom. So it's the removal of those pipes and then the shaping of the new channel, which I'll show you on a subsequent slide. The green and the yellow is temporary impacts to the water course, and the wetlands area just associated with temporary coffer damming that we need to have as a part of our construction process. Then the permanent impacts to the wetlands are here in orange. And so that's driven by two things. So right now, the roadway embankment drops off right from the edge of pavement. So that undermines the edge of the roadway a little bit, but to install new guide rail, we need to have a shoulder underneath that guide rail for it to be installed properly and to function properly. So we have to grade that out a little bit and then regrade it. But really so that's some of this impact, and that's where the fill is coming from, is adjusting that slope to accommodate the guide rail. But the rest of that is also grading that new channel and pulling those contours back. So it's a combination of the roadway and then shaping the new channel for the permanent impacts to the wetlands and then just to clarify this graphic, the orange is our wetland limit, the state wetland limit. The blue is the ordinary high water, and then this is the FEMA floodplain, which is not really tied to any elevations. It's just a graphical representation. And then just as far as our cut fill, so this looks a little worse than it is. The blue is the fill, the red is the cut. When we're in the roadway, we're talking, I mean, for the most part, the fill, in general, we're talking about a couple of inches in terms of adjusting the grade. We're matching the profile of the road, but we're fixing some cross slope issues to make sure that the road, is draining properly. And then we obviously have the slope adjustments, on all four corners to make sure that we've got the room for the guide rail. But then with the removal of the existing culvert, this all balances out to a net cut of not just under 25 cubic yards. And that's all relative to the floodway and the, or sorry, not the floodway, the floodplain, cut and fill in the floodplain. So then here is the elevation of the bridge relative to the channel. So one of the things that we had to do here, this was a request from DEP. Obviously we have a very large wetland. We're taking a small culvert and putting in a much bigger bridge. And so one of the things they wanted us to verify was that we're not going to suddenly drain the wetlands. So we had to run some of the very low level design storms. So from FEMA's, or sorry, Army Corps' perspective, they want us to pass the 100, but we looked at the small level storms, like the 1 year storm. So just your average heavy rain, to make sure that under those events, under normal rain events, we're not lowering the water surface elevations. And so in order to accomplish that, we have graded out a low flow channel so that during those smaller rain events, the channel is more confined and it's keeping that wetland upstream of the bridge fed, and we're not dewatering that with the proposed design. And then I wanted to address while we're here, the beaver concerns. So obviously right now, this is fairly typical of what these pipes look like, and this comes and goes as the water washes this down. Like I said, we don't know if this is deliberate or if this is just a byproduct of what's going on upstream. But the new culvert is going to mitigate this issue. If this is deliberate by the beavers, obviously it's much easier for them to clog a 4.5 foot diameter pipe. With the new design, they'd have to try and clog a 26 foot clear span, which hopefully is a lot more difficult for them to do. So if this is deliberate, this should be very, for them to try and replicate that on a 26 foot bridge is going to be very difficult. If this is just a product of what's going on upstream and this is just getting washed down, this is all going to flow through. So the new bridge should help prevent this kind of debris buildup, because this is also reducing the capacity of the culvert as well. So any flooding that's occurring, because this is undersized, is just worsening because that debris is getting hung up, and going to a clear span bridge will address that issue. And then this is just the shape of the proposed channel. We're matching generally what's out there today. So it does slope up a little bit into the bridge because there's some scour upstream. So we're generally matching that slope. And the other thing to note is that even though we're going to a much bigger bridge, it's not going to suddenly speed up the water, which is another thing that attracts the beavers. It's still a very low flow channel, or sorry, low velocity channel. So we're not going to be, increasing the water agitation that might draw them to the area. And then this is just a sketch of the general construction scheme. So obviously we've got water on all sides. So in order to excavate, to be able to install these abutments, we're going to have sheet pile cofferdams. So that'll enclose the excavation. That'll help limit the excavation. So we're not, moving into the wetlands any more than we have to. So that'll keep that confined, allow the contractor to dewater, install the foundations. And then we're sort of doing a belt and suspenders approach by doing a temporary pipe as well to just kind of help keep the water as confined as we can to make it easier for them to install those abutments. One of the benefits of going with a traditional bridge, it allows us to fully form and create that new channel with full access before we put that superstructure on top of it. And I'll talk about the other alternatives that we considered and how it made it harder for us to do that. So we'll be able to, the contractor will have plenty of room to make sure he's properly constructing, installing that channel. Once the abutments are in, the channel is done, then they'll put the superstructure on and they'll be out of the water. But without having to relocate or fully bypass the water course. And we're targeting 2023 construction. The exact start date is going to vary depending on when DOT obligates the money. We'll have to submit everything to them and then they'll have to sign off. But we are still targeting 2023 construction, probably an estimated 6 to 7 month construction schedule. So if they started in April, they'd be finishing, September, October timeline. One of the requests that we had from the town was a series of meetings. Specifications that, the town will be contacted and there will be coordination between the contractor and the town so that the town has adequate inspection at various stages. There'll be a pre-con meeting, the flagging before they start clearing.
Sorry, 1 second. Just want to make sure we're.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we're okay. Keep going, sorry.
Yeah, I wasn't sure
No
about those
problem.
audio settings.
They'll flag the clearing limits, that'll be inspected, sedimentation control. Once the channel has been completed before the superstructure goes on, and then again, during the planting and final seeding, which I'll get to on the subsequent slide. And then the only restriction that we really have from DEP was just your typical unconfined in-water restriction, June 1 to September 30th. Although that does not include copper dam installation.
Could you go over that with that? What is that unconfined water restriction?
So, there are times when you can work in the water without having to have that enclosed
I
off.
see.
And they restrict that for, fish
Gotcha.
passage and spawning, which just that doesn't really apply to this case, but that's a standard from condition from DEP. And then once all that is done, once the bridge is in, we do intend to fully restore the site. So we have a couple of different hatches here. The new channel bottom will consist of native stream bed material. So that'll be material that is intended to match as closely as possible the gradation of what's out there now. There is going to be some rounded riprap at the abutments, but that will be covered with that channel bed material. So we'll have a little bit of armoring, but then it'll be covered by the native material. So you won't have large stone that's going to be visible. From a planting perspective, so all of the disturbed areas will be seeded with a conservation seed mix. So that's all native. We're not doing a lawn type seeding. It's all going to be native. Doesn't require regular mowing or maintenance, that sort of thing. And then on top of that, we have added some plantings. So above the water elevation along the embankments, we've specified a series of shrubs. So we have speckled alder, buttonbush, sweet pepper bush, mealberry, and black chokeberry, and that'll get spaced. Our wetland soil scientists will be out on site coordinating with the contractor exactly where they're going to go, but we specified the elevations. So the speckled alder and buttonbush are going to go closer to the water line, and then the others will be more upland. And then we've also added some herbaceous plugs, which will go right along the toe of that riprap and actually be in the water. So it'll help naturalize this new channel as quickly as possible. So now as far as the other alternatives that we considered before we settled on the full bridge replacement, the traditional bridge with the abutments and the superstructure, we did look at a couple of other alternatives. One of them was a 3-sided culvert. And the disadvantage of this, if you can see from where you're sitting, is that so the culvert is, it comes all in one piece. It makes it much easier to construct. It goes in quickly, but you can see that the channel grades up into the leg of the culvert because the underclearance, we only have about 5 feet, 6 feet of underclearance here between the flow board and the channel. So what they would have to do here is, as they're setting each piece, they're trying to grade the channel inside that confined space. And it's very difficult for them to do. It's difficult for them to do it neatly and accurately. And with the limited space that we have, we would probably need to do a temporary bypass offset from the existing alignment so that they would have the room to even do that while they're trying to work under that culvert as they're setting each piece. So just some challenges, constructability challenges associated with this particular alternative. And then very similar to the closed bottom box culvert, we looked at this because the soils out here are actually very solid, very good. So a box culvert could easily be tolerated from a geotechnical perspective. But then you have the obvious issue of where does the water go while we're installing this? So certainly this one would have to have a bypass probably at the low point over here where we could connect this tributary coming in. So we would have to shift that water over. And then with box culverts, even in a low velocity channel like this, that material does migrate. You could have an exposed bottom in 5-10 years as that material moves around. And the other downside to this particular alternative was that with smaller span boxes, you can skew the end so that it matches the road. With a large span, it's much harder for them to fabricate. And so you'd have these, you wouldn't be able to skew the bridge to match the road. Now you've got more impact. Even though this would go together very quickly because you're just dropping the culvert in, it just wasn't really feasible, wasn't a good fit for the site. And then we were asked to just kind of take a quick look at, this road's been closed for a while. We don't know how many cars are on would be on it now. Could we have done a 1-lane bridge and try and reduce the impacts? And it really wasn't a feasible alternative. Greg mentioned the funding program. We're under the state local bridge funding program. And per their guidelines, you cannot install a 1-lane bridge. There is not currently a 1-lane bridge. If you rarely DOT has made an exception, but you really have to prove that the traffic volume justifies the reduction from 2 lanes to 1. And without that data, you could put in a 1-lane bridge and DOT could flag it as soon as it's been reopened. So it would have been a very tough sell to try and put a 1-lane bridge in here from the perspective of the state. And the other thing to consider is that it really wouldn't have reduced the impacts as far as the impacts during construction. You would have opened up more channel maybe, but the wing walls, if the embankment stays the same, the wing walls still need to be just as long. You still have the impacts, in the wetlands on that southern side. So, ultimately you really wouldn't get much out of doing a 1-lane bridge anyway. And then last but not least, just the additional coordination that we've had to do. So to get our Army Corps permits, we've had to do SHPO coordination. They've given us a no adverse effect. So the stone that's out there today, there's some interest in whether or not that could be reused. There's not really enough there for us to reuse on this bridge. But as I understand it, the town, that it will be salvaged and returned to the town so that it can hopefully be reused elsewhere. It's just not going to be able to be reused on the site. DEP Fisheries has signed off, so they're comfortable with it. Obviously, with the spillway downstream, fish passage through this area is limited anyway, which kind of covers the band and sunfish. So our natural diversity database final determination was received. There were 3 species or 3, poorfen isn't a species per se, but so there's the whippoorwill. We're not really in a location where we're going to be impacting them. That typically requires a more forested area, but there's just some limitations on the tree clearing, the time of year for that. Fisheries cleared us for the banded sunfish. And then the poorfen, we've met with DEP in the field to look at the site because this was flagged based on old aerial imagery, not by actual boots on the ground. So they kind of raised the flag saying, we just want to check this. And really the location, if there is a poorfen area, it was going to be over here in that historic cranberry bog. So DEP was out there at the site. They concurred that we don't have poorfen in the area that we're going to be impacting. We're also downstream of any potential location. So any changes to the hydraulics are downstream of where that might be and should not affect. But again, we don't know if it's even still there. It was flagged based on historic aerial imagery. And then the other thing we had to do, this is now a new requirement of the Army Corps permit, is check with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So NDDB, this is all state species. This is federal. So typical northern long-eared bat. And this is the areas with the known hybridicula. Obviously, we're way down here, so we're not in a known area for those. And then monarch butterfly, but we're not in a site that's really conducive to those as well. So those should not be a concern either. And then a month or so ago, we got confirmation from Army Corps and DEP that the project should qualify under a GP19 self-certification. So that'll just be, filling out a form permit and submitting it to them for their records. So I believe that covers. Yep.
I read in the written part of somewhere
Yeah.
that you were going to install something that had a name, and it was supposed to facilitate crossing of critters.
Well, the shaping of the channel, the way we form that should do that. So I also, back in the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned the 1.2 times being full width requirement from DEP. So they're asking us to make the channel 20% bigger than the actual river wants to, or the water course wants to be. So creating that 20% gives a little bit of bank space on either side. And then the way that we've shaped the channel under low flow conditions, there should be actual crossing space
Oh,
under the bridge.
okay.
Could you elaborate a little bit on long-term maintenance?
This should significantly reduce the town's long-term maintenance needs. Obviously, the existing culvert is a restriction, so even without the upstream beaver activity, it's going to be prone to debris clogging it, and really any kind of structure like that should be checked somewhat regularly to make sure it's not clogging, because the clogging can cause flooding, the clogging can cause damage to the structure. This is going to significantly reduce the debris issues. And then everything is going to be concrete. Concrete generally performs better than, say, steel girders in a damp environment like this. So I would expect this to be fairly low maintenance for the town. The only thing you might want to do is come out periodically, just ensure that the vegetation isn't getting too dense and starting to limit sight distances on the roadway. But the new bridge should have a much lower maintenance requirement for you than what's out there now.
Didn't you mention that the channel bottom is going to be, you're using native soil?
Yes.
So there's always a concern about long-term erosion,
Mhm.
plants growth, things like this, and
Yep. So I mean, we're
clogging or the opposite in effect.
Yeah. So it should be like the velocities here are fairly low. So we're not expecting to see a lot of migration. There'll be some natural reshaping of the channel now that the restriction is gone. But we didn't, our modeling didn't show that there's going to be a lot of movement here. As far as the movement of the channel. And then by doing all the plantings, that'll hopefully stabilize things so you're not having movement or anything before the water courses had a chance to stabilize.
How do you, who confirms the elevations of the final construction to make sure they match the design?
So one of the items in the construction estimate is survey staking. So the part of their contract, the contractor will have to hire a surveyor to come out, and they'll do horizontal and vertical surveying to make sure that everything's getting set to the right elevations.
And was there any consideration given to just replacing it with a pedestrian and bicycle bridge?
No. I don't know if you can see Greg, he said no. I think emergency services was a big concern here. And that reminds me, we did have a comment from emergency services. They just wanted to make sure that the new bridge was going to be adequate for their vehicles. So they did provide us with 2 emergency services vehicles that will be load rated and included in the records, the design calculations for the bridge.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I have a few questions. So the first is the picture of the spillway, the downstream spillway on the Halsey property. Is that a recent picture?
Yes,
So that's in good shape.
we didn't inspect it.
Okay.
It's on private property. It's
Yep.
outside the limits of the bridge, but we had our survey crew take a survey section at that location for the purposes of the modeling.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's a recent photo.
Okay.
That was taken probably earlier this year.
And my second question, did you get a sign off from GOSA or you just have documentation that they're aware the project is happening?
From whom?
Did you get a sign off from the Groton Open Space Association adjacent property owner?
It said they would get it later.
Yeah,
Closer
it's
to
an
the-
acknowledgement, but we'll be getting the actual easements from them later.
Got it, but you don't have it right now.
We don't have it right.
Okay, and then the increase in size from 9 feet to 26 feet gives me pause. And I appreciate that probably before the bridge was there, this was just one contiguous wetland.
Yeah.
And you stated that it's not going to change or drain that wetland. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So for the hydraulic modeling, we evaluate a series of different storms. So obviously from the Army Corps' perspective, they're looking at typically the 50 or the 100-year because they're looking at big events. We're looking for something like this, you're looking at just what ordinary conditions are. And so that's where we modeled what's called the 1-year event. So, a heavy rain that'll come through once a year, basically. So we looked at that and we looked at the water surface elevations. We run an existing conditions model. So for the existing bridge, we look at what those water surface elevations are, and then we run a proposed model. And we looked at that 1-year event and made sure that those elevations in the model match. So, with the hydraulic models, they're, based on the survey data, they're based on LiDAR data. There's some plus or minus there, but from the modeling that we have, the proposed and the existing match at that low level event, which would be what would impact dewatering of those wetlands. Yeah, and that was also what drove that confined channel, that restricted channel. So even though the bridge is going to be 26 feet, I don't know, can you go to that slide? Yeah. So even though the bridge is going to be 26 feet, this is the channel area
Gotcha.
for that,
Okay.
for those low, for normal flows when it's not flooding. The ordinary high water is probably, somewhere in here. So it'll be within that channel.
I appreciate that clarification. And then I just have one last question. Just for the record, we all walked this property, so we've all seen it in the field. And when we were in the field, Greg mentioned that he had been dealing with beaver for a number of years. And so I just need a little clarification. You're talking a lot about upstream beaver activity. Has there been some more information passed that I haven't heard?
No, I mean, it sounded like we'd gotten a comment saying somebody had seen beavers in the preserve area upstream. I'm not entirely sure where. Short of trapping them and removing them, there's not a dam at the site for us to remove or to try and address. So our focus was just to put together something that would be less prone to catching any debris that they might be producing if they are active upstream. This could just be detritus from any dams that we have that's getting washed down and getting stuck. That's just going to pass through. It's just going to wash through now. And then, we're not opening this up. Now there's going to be rushing water that's going to be attracting them to this location. So they shouldn't be drawn here to try and, create a new dam.
Why is that going to rush through when you still have two?
No, I was just saying that we're not creating that.
You're not
condition.
creating that.
Yeah,
Okay.
because, that's what they're looking for, is that rushing water to then.
And the town recently sent Annie and I to a really great conference. And there was a presentation on a beaver. I have all this stuff here. I don't know if we want it in the record or anything like that, but it's a beaver diversion. Yada, yada. Where is it? Here somewhere. There it is. Have you looked into devices? I don't know. They're beaver diversion devices.
Well, you can put a pipe into the water, and drain it a little.
Beaver deceiver.
I'm just, that you sent us, just saying.
I think that is in a more restricted section.
So, but I guess again, it's just since this is a public hearing, that's what I'm, this is the sort of stuff we need to get on record so that we can make sure that we've addressed everything.
Yeah, like, there's nothing, as far as the bridge is concerned, the best thing we can do is just to open this up so that it doesn't get clogged by whatever activity might be going on upstream. And that this isn't something that they can clog if they choose to. If they come to this site, it's gonna be kind of hard for them to create a dam that's, 26 feet across before you guys even realize that they've done it. So, like I said, our wetland scientists didn't see any beaver activity at the site.
Mhm.
If there is beaver activity, it's probably upstream, wherever you had them in the past.
Mhm.
But, as far as the bridge is concerned, this should perform much better if that activity continues.
And so you would be able to make the statement then it wouldn't increase the flooding upstream, the size of the wetland, the depth of the wetland.
Yeah, it's not going to increase flooding. Under those major events under the 100-year storm, the water surface elevation is coming down. It's just that normal flow that affects the wetland size that we made sure we matched that. But there should be no water surface elevation increases. That's a part of this. It should perform better in that regard.
Thank you. That was a great presentation.
Other questions? Anyone in the audience have questions, comments?
I know I saw someone that raised hand. There's someone online.
Dan O'Connell?
Yes, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi there. I'm from 19 Main Street. I'm also the president of GOSA. And I have taken a look at the plans and the site. But you're talking about beavers, so I can give you a little bit of information about that. There is a beaver dam currently about, I'd say 500-600 feet north of the Groton Ledyard boundary in Ledyard. So there is activity. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. That's great.
Okay, and is this a good time for me to ask a question?
Certainly.
Okay. First, I thought the plan looks great. We support it and we'll help out however we can. The question I have is during stage 2 of the construction, has to do with the bypass pipe, which is a 48-inch pipe. I would just like to hear a little bit more about that because it seems like at least during that stage of construction, if we had a lot of rain or whatever, there'd be less flow. Unless I'm probably missing something. So I would love to hear how that's going to work.
Sure. So when it comes to temporary bypass pipes, they're sized a little bit differently than the bridge would be. So they're sized based on how long we anticipate them being in place and what the largest rain event is that's anticipated for that duration. So that's why, we're able to put in that 48-inch pipe is because this should be occurring during the summer months when the water is low. And that pipe should be in place for, maybe 2 months while they do a month to 2 months, I would say, while they're doing the abutments. As soon as the abutments are in and the channel's in, that pipe comes out. So it's intended to be there for a fairly limited time. And the design guidelines that we follow is to size that pipe for the storm based on the duration that it's in place. So it's sized for a smaller storm. I don't know off the top, I don't recall off the top of my head if it's, 2 times the average spring flow or, a 1-year event, but it's sized for a smaller level storm. And that's why we've got that 48-inch diameter pipe. But the other thing too is that from a water handling perspective, if we were to get a major storm, the contractor's got to keep his eye on the weather. If something's coming, he's got to button the site up. And it's possible if they see something big coming, what we do is we pull that pipe out. because we do have those, the water handling cofferdams. So that's the purple line is going to be steel sheet piling. So if they take that pipe out, there's still, space for that channel to flow. That's actually going to be, more than the size of those. So, in the event that something comes through that's too big for that temporary pipe, we pull that pipe out.
Well, thank you. That's a great explanation.
So,
Are there any others up there?
No, that's the other applicant.
No, okay.
Don't
Comments?
hesitate to ask a question. We're really nice.
I guess, Dan Bruno, 300 Haley Road. Our question would be more about the construction, and the noise affecting the wildlife. Is that gonna affect the wildlife?
So, I mean, the noise is, gonna be there for a couple of months. All of the species that the state or the federal government is sensitive to, which I listed on the last slide, they give us typically time of year restrictions is, okay, we don't want you doing things during certain times of year because that's going to be most disruptive to their nesting periods, their breeding periods, or whatever the case may be. So, there's going to be noise related to the construction, but there's limitations on when they can do certain activities to limit the impacts that it has on the wildlife in the area. And then as far as noise, as far as, you're concerned with where you live, the contractor hours will be limited during the daytime. So they're not going to be, hammering piles in while you're trying to sleep. So hopefully, the noisiest part of this is going to be when those piles go in. That'll be, a couple weeks and then it'll be done. The rest of it shouldn't be too bad.
Weekends as well, or just weekdays?
We haven't finalized the schedule, but we'll coordinate that with the town if there's going to be limitations on construction. But typically, the contractor will typically be working Monday through Friday.
Other questions, comments?
What impact, if any, is going to take place downstream?
Very little. This is the so upstream, the bridge, the existing culvert has some influence, but downstream, it's all influenced by the spillway. So we're not letting more water in than the channel can handle. It's just going to level out. But there shouldn't be any impacts downstream of this. And our limits of the channel reconstruction pretty much extend just to the limits of the right of way, or just past the limits of the right of way. So that's not physically, we're not impacting that large of a footprint.
May want to ask Dave. He's got a report.
You want? Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that. I just wanted to clarify a few things. We had a staff review back in November 1st, and we had asked the applicant specifically to explore other alternatives, which I think they answered pretty well. But the one thing I wanted just to clarify, because it was part of the notes there. So the single lane bridge, besides the impacts, the increased impacts to the wetland for grading, can you talk a little bit about the potential safety issues too? Because I think that was another piece of it too.
Yeah. So I don't know if I have a great, you could maybe go to the aerial. That's in the beginnings. Right. So from a one-lane bridge perspective, if a one-lane bridge were to be installed, you'd have that stop controlled. So you'd approach from either side, stop, and then take turns crossing. But you're complicated slightly by the fact that now you've got an intersection here as well. And that one lane, you probably have the stop control here and the stop control here. But one of the things that you need to make sure you can accommodate is the ability for somebody stopped here to see somebody stopped here. And what you'd have to do in order to maintain that is you probably have to take a bigger easement from the parcel on the south side. So from the stopping point for these northbound vehicles, they need to be able to see across to here. So this needs to be kept clear in order for them to be able to see, for people to be able to make those turns and not drive into each other on the bridge. And so that's something to consider if you know, a one-lane bridge were an alternative, that, you know, really the town would be having to come out here, you know, regularly cutting this down to make sure that people can see. And then, you know, you're not really getting, you know, you've got this, you're protecting the wetland area, but now you got to routinely cut down that vegetation to make sure that people can see and make that alternating one-way traffic pattern work.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to remind the agency, as you're making a decision, you determined that it was major, so that's why we're here today. Obviously, you know, that's why we were looking for a more detailed alternatives analysis. And the couple of things that you're looking for is to make sure that the other alternatives are deemed neither feasible nor prudent. And I just wanted to define them once again for everyone's sake. So again, feasible means able to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles. And prudent meaning economically or otherwise reasonable in light of the benefits to be derived from the proposed regulated activity, provided costs may be considered in deciding what is prudent, and further provided a mere showing of expense will not necessarily mean an alternative is improvement. The applicant has provided convincing evidence that there are not feasible or prudent alternatives to the design. I think especially with the 2-lane down to the 1-lane, due to the greater impacts, potential greater impacts to the wetland because of grading, and then also because of the safety concerns from a visibility perspective. And then obviously the other piece too is that going from a 9-foot to a 26-foot span bridge represents significant hydrological and ecological benefits from that over the existing undersized failed two-pipe culvert, and will result in more of a naturalized channel, bringing it back to what it kind of used to be. And the other piece that I think is important to note, that wasn't on the original plans was the wetland mitigation plan, specifically for the plantings. Specifically, it was mostly a seed mix, and they've added a bunch of shrubs in there as well as the plugs as well to enhance that whole area there. So.
All right, any additional questions? No,
Sounds good to me.
and we'll call for a motion to close the hearing.
Can I just put these in the record?
Yeah.
Programs.
Yeah, these have to go in the.
And you guys are sure you don't need any other information before closing the hearing?
I was gonna say that, yeah. No, that's what I was just gonna say is like, so once we close the hearing, so if there's any other questions,
Yeah.
That's it. We can't hear any more information or whatnot. The decision has to be based upon what we just heard and what we just discussed.
Yeah.
We can't speculate on anything, and obviously, and after that.
So does everybody feel comfortable with the beaver situation? With what they've presented?
I do, I mean, as much as can be done, I
Right,
mean,
exactly.
you know. I think the likelihood of beavers closing the 26-foot opening.
Yeah.
Is a lot smaller than
Mhm.
closing those two pipes, that's for sure. You know. I'm not sure there's any mitigation that you could do on that big an opening. I've seen ones obviously on streams, and
So you
things-
couldn't put a device like that on a big opening like that?
I don't think so.
Does anybody know if you can put a diverter device on a 26-foot opening?
I have to see it. I'm not-
Only on small channels.
I mean, the widest I've ever seen is, you know, maybe 6 or 7 feet at the most, page wise, you know,
Mhm.
across.
Does it matter if the beavers are way up in Ledger? As the fellow said? Do we have any say over that?
No,
No.
No, we don't have any say over it,
No.
but again, what we're trying to avoid is, you know.
having them
Filling
move
up
down.
the
that's
area
exactly
again.
right, having that,
Yeah.
the water rise.
I don't think
upstream.
it necessarily dependent upon beavers remember when we walked the Eccleston Brook pathway and we went under one bridge and it was,
You mean I
Totally.
went under?
well, a lot of us stood there and looked.
You
When
mean
it-
I crawled under?
Yeah, and that was filled up and no beavers in sight. The things just fill up on their own.
Mhm.
And keep in mind, you know, if there does develop a beaver situation here, I mean, Public Works is out here all the time. You know, if there needs to be some sort of remedy
Okay.
in the future, if the beavers move south from Ledyard, I mean,
Okay.
we can take care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion to close the
I
hearing.
make a motion to close the public hearing on the
You have a second?
Quake
Second
Farm
it.
Road Bridge.
Okay.
One piece of housekeeping, just please hit your buttons to talk, because if you don't hit them, it's not pick, it's only.
Oh, I
picks up-
thought since the red was on, we
No.
were.
Sorry,
Oh, shoot. I'm so sorry.
it should have picked everything up, but just in case.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention? So moved.
So sorry. I thought this was just on.
You don't want me in front of you, just.
Well, this one here is catching a lot of it. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
We have any discussion you wanna? I mean, I think the beaver question is certainly you know, a valid one, but I think a 26-foot opening is gonna be a lot tougher for the beavers to close up than two culverts.
Yeah, it's gonna keep itself clean.
Any comments on that or? I mean, I personally, I love beavers, but you know. They can be a pest.
Well, I think again, if we maybe just had, I think it's going to be important to the timing of this. So
Oh,
I understand that I think it's going to be important for the timing of this construction. I understand that you have to wait for money and all that kind of stuff, but I do think low flow timing
Yeah.
would be super important. And then just maybe, since obviously Public Works doesn't want this thing clogging up any more than anybody who's upstream wants it clogging up. So we just maybe have one contingency, you know, you routinely check for clogging up. That would be, I guess what I would say. So let me just read what we have here.
So I was gonna say one thing, the draft motion that was presented around to you, so in terms of the schedule, I did take what was asked for by Connecticut Deep and put that as one of the conditions in terms of all unconfined in-water work shall be restricted to the period of June 1st to September 30th, inclusive the installation or removal of water control structures such as cofferdams is acceptable during this period, and that comes directly off of the authorization from Connecticut Deep. It's part of the conditions.
That's great. Yeah.
If you wanted to add something additional about the beavers, I mean, if you don't, that's fine too. I mean, it's
yeah, I don't think there's anything you can do. I think
right. Yeah.
nature will take its course and we'll find out.
Yeah.
Other comments, discussion, no? All right, we have a draft motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Quaker Farm Road Bridge replacement. This application is to fill 187 square feet of inland wetlands and to impact 415 square feet of inland wetlands. The activity is associated with the replacement of the existing Quaker Farm Road Bridge. Make the motion to approve the application for the following reasons. The agency finds that a prudent and feasible alternative does not exist for the filling of 187 square feet of wetlands, and that the applicant has provided convincing evidence that reducing the bridge design from 2 lanes down to 1 lane will not result in less impact to the wetland. The agency notes that reducing the design down to 1 lane could in fact incur a greater level of impact on the wetland resource due to far more extensive grading of the slope of the embankment. In addition, a 1-lane design would cause potential public safety and visibility issues with the location of the crossing just 75 feet west of the intersection with Haley Road. Number 2, the proposed 26-foot clear span bridge represents significant hydrological and ecological improvements over the existing undersized 2-pipe culvert. Number 3, the project will result in an open bottom naturalized channel that more closely mimics the native stream bed, resulting in long-term fish passage, less clogging of woody debris, and no reduction in water surface elevations of the wetland. Number 4, the sediment and erosion control plan will protect the wetlands during construction. Number 5, the applicant has proposed a wetland mitigation plan that will fully restore the site with native shrubs, grasses, and other plantings. This permit is subject to the 4 standard conditions and the following modification. Number 1, all unconfined in-water work shall be restricted to the period of June 1st to September 30th, inclusive. The installation or removal of water control structures, such as coffer dams, is acceptable during this period.
We have a second. Hey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay,
Thanks for coming out.
nice presentation.
Yeah, very nice. Well
I
done.
know you were nervous.
We're really nice.
Very flexible.
So she's from the engineering.
Sure. If they're able to build a 26, before anybody notices that.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Maybe put my agenda.
He's got it.
Right.
That is.
All right. That brings us down to
What was Driscoll correspondence?
public comment.
Right, so that was the letter that was in your
Oh,
packet, sorry, that was the
okay.
letter that was in your packet regarding upstream in, issues with.
Upstream
beavers.
beaver. Oh, okay.
And again, you guys don't issue permits to beavers, so there's not, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Approval of the minutes of October 26th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 26th and October 31st special meeting.
I second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Good. No new applications, nothing. 0 Flanders Road.
They are not coming tonight because they're still working on revised materials they're coming to the next meeting, the public hearing.
All right. And 0 High Street,
He is here, so Jim's here. I'm gonna promote him and allow him to talk. And he'll present the project, the 2-lot subdivision for High Street.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Promoting you to panelist, Jim.
Join as a.
You should be able to share your
There we
screen
go.
now, Jim.
Okay. I was getting a little
There you
panicky
are.
because I didn't have the option to to for my camera to come on or my microphone. So I was a little concerned that it wasn't going to work properly, but it did. So we had the site walk on this property back on October 17th. There were some comments that were generated from both staff and some of the commission members when we were out there. We addressed those comments. I'm not going to go over all of them, just in particular, a couple of things that I felt were important. We ended up moving the property line for lot 2, and I'm going to see if I can get this to share. Let's see, how can I share my screen?
Should say share screen on the bottom.
Let's see.
Full green.
This one, share this, share. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so what we did was we moved the property line between lot 1 and 2. We had the properties are basically split evenly square footage wise. And so what we ended up doing was I moved the property line over between the two of them about 6 feet and reduced this down to exactly 20,000 square feet, which is what we need for the zone. And that gave us, about 6 feet further here, which gave us a little more potential area to develop this portion of the property and a little bit further step back from the upland review area. We also, if you look at this page here, we also changed the house. You may recall the owner was there at the meeting when we had the site walk. He had some plans that had been prepared by Peter Springsteel. Originally, we had this as a little Cape style house with a detached garage. The latest plans that he has, which are his actual intent to build on this lot, the house is reflected here on this site. Again, the one for lot 2 is shown as basically a small Cape with a small 2-car garage. We're not sure how that's going to pan out or what's going to be built there. The property owner intends to build this house for himself, and that is the actual house he intends to build. We're just showing this one as a conceptual layout and a potential location for this house. We addressed, as I said, the comments from planning. There were several comments from the town engineer with regards to extension of the sewer. Ed Wenke, my civil engineer and structural engineer, prepared a full set of detailed plans for the sewer extension in the road. That is well outside the upland review area. So I think the comments I was getting from our site walk was that the staff and the commission was pretty well satisfied with the applicant's remediation of that slope from the previous inland wetlands application and the vegetation that had been established. So I don't believe there was any other comments or concerns. And if you have any, I'd be happy to address it.
Thank you, Jim. And just to supplement what Jim has said, these houses are meant to be built at the same time. So the erosion and sedimentation control plan you see is not phased. And it's also been submitted to the PCC. So this project will be going before PCC.
Why do they have to be built at the same time?
And he just said they weren't going
They
to
weren't
build
gonna
it
be.
the same.
Yeah.
That guy just said he's going to build the house for himself, and then he's not even sure he's going to
The
build
other
the
one
other
is
house.
a possible house.
Correct.
That's the prediction.
Oh, okay. My mistake. I apologize. So then the question is, why is the erosion control plan going in all at once? Jim?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear was that question directed to me? And if it was, I couldn't hear the question.
The question is directed at you, and it is regarding the erosion and sedimentation control plan. It looks as though it's to be installed all at one time.
That's correct. The plan is designed as if the entire property was going to be developed. When it comes time, I would assume for the actual building permit on lot 2, we will have to prepare a separate soil and erosion control plan that it can be reviewed by staff to make sure it's adequate for the development of that particular lot. But this is an overall erosion and sediment control plan. And again, both houses are not going to be built at the same time. Right now, there's no intention to build on the northerly lot, lot 2. The owner intends to build pretty soon on lot 1 for himself.
Do we have the physical plans? Thanks.
Hard to see that.
What changes? Change some of them. So this is the change.
This is the back, yeah.
So what?
So he
where
moved the
was
lot
it?
line over was like
6 feet, you said?
6 feet this way.
Okay.
And we discussed that and the lot line over.
And then what did
And then
we gain?
these
What did we-
changed somewhat. But we gained less of this garage
in the
is
thing?
in the
So we
upland
just
area.
shifted the same
shifted
building
it.
over. Okay,
It's
Right.
slightly different, but yes.
and existing top of the slope right now is here? 76 about right?
Yes. That's a 78.
So that's 78. So yeah, so that's pretty
Pretty
flat
flat
here.
up here.
This one's okay. And then the distance. What's the actual distance? Not that it makes any difference because the slope is so steep, but
The distance. Okay, which. For the distance up,
to the well.
so this is the 100-foot distance.
Okay, so here it is here.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha. See that? So if you would be able to build this on this 75. I'm just looking for a distance. You know where I'm going?
Yeah,
You can also measure. it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
He's blown it up there.
Okay.
You can
Yeah,
tell
he
we
can
want
measure.
measure.
You look
So-
at,
Better than me.
you look at the second one?
So could you possibly, Jim, could you please draw a line, or put your finger or draw a line with your finger on what, the 75 foot from the wetland line would look like? In terms of what,
Yeah, I'm looking at,
Just
if this is 100 feet, I'm gonna
that's
say,
100, yep,
yeah, I'm gonna say that the 75-foot line probably comes right through here. And then actually, then we've got the wetlands in the back as well. So this is 100. So the
Yep.
75 is probably coming in like this.
okay. So I feel like that's what I could support. I don't want to get picky and measure exactly or anything.
we'll have to look at the plan for the actual second house when that eventually comes in.
Except I don't know if we're gonna get that though. I think we're gonna.
If you said, that there shall be no activity
Right.
within 75 feet. And they present a plan to the building official that meets that, then yeah, you don't see it. I mean, we look at it to make sure.
Right.
But if it turns out that whoever buys that house decides they want something really big
That's right.
and something that gets closer.
Yep.
Then they have the opportunity to come back in and ask for another permit.
Correct.
Yeah, and I just feel, given this site and the history and the situation, I feel comfortable with 75 feet here. So I just, that would be my vote. No activity within 75 feet of the wetlands all the way around.
Would that include grading as well, or would that just be for the building structure?
I think you should be able to grade.
Okay. Because we're showing that here. There is grading here, probably, it looks like about within 60 feet of the wetlands.
Where
Just
is
to-
that? Can you make?
That would 60 feet. So if you look here, this, I'm guessing this is about 60 feet from the wetlands, that this little bit of fill slope that's coming out for the construction of the garage and the and
Yeah,
the
well, that's
portion of
why
the
I'm-
driveway.
yeah. That's why I'm trying to get tight over there.
So I just want to clarify, you're saying no activity within 75 feet.
Including.
I'd like
grading.
to say.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I just wanted that clear as well.
my understanding. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We can put that in, can't we?
As a
Yeah.
condition of-
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can.
You totally can.
Yeah, and they'd have to come back then if they want.
If they wanted anything more, they'd have
Yeah.
to
If they want to
support
garage,
it
they have to
wall
come
or
back.
something before it gets to 75 feet.
Yeah.
That's all.
Why 75 feet?
I think it's compromise. Again, I'm all over balance. And I think
Yeah.
given the site and the previous disturbance and I don't think this site warrants 100 feet.
No, I don't think so either. A lot of times we are looking for 100 feet, but
That's right.
I think 75 is a good compromise.
Yeah. And again, a lot of that, to me, the 75 also has to do with the fact that there is that slope there. So they've got that stable, rather not get it unstable. That's where I'm going. But that's just me. You guys can have a say
They
too.
could put the garage under the house too, or on
Yeah,
the
again,
first
we
floor of
don't
the house.
Have that,
There's lots of things they
yeah,
could
we don't have that jurisdiction. We
No,
just.
I agree, but I'm
Okay.
saying there's options.
have a motion. Did you add that to it?
I have not, I would write it on every one of yours, but we'll just discuss it and we'll make sure it's in the
Yeah,
note.
we,
That we could add another condition about the no activity.
we won't have you do that.
I can't,
Oh, there's a lot of.
You guys know something more about the history of this site. That's a natural slope, is it not?
No,
No,
oh gosh, no.
Well,
it's all fill.
there's been so much work done on that.
You can add it to the end of two,
Unbelievable.
if,
No, those,
if it's
We-
limited to
I think
75
before you
feet.
came on, we made them
no, that's a.
really change
Yeah,
the
leave that.
back slope. It was like, you know, and
It's still pretty steep.
it's still fairly, steep, but it was 3 times as steep before. And, yeah, so.
so Eunice, you got that?
You ready, Eunice?
Yeah, I am ready. But Barbara just brought up to me, do we normally put in to approve for the following reasons, the sediment and the property sediment and erosion control plan will adequately protect the wetland? You normally have that there?
That's an average thing, yeah.
I make a motion to approve the Catchmar subdivision 0 High Street for the construction within the upland review area. To approve the Catchmar application for the following reason, there is no loss of wetland or watercourse associated with this application. Number 2, the property sediment and erosion control plan will adequately protect the wetlands. This permit is subject to the 5 standard condition with 1 additional condition. There shall be no activity within 75 feet of the surrounding wetlands.
Okay, do we have a second
Second it.
discussion?
Can I get some clarification?
Push your button there.
I got it. Okay. No activity, or was it no construction?
No activity,
No activity.
Yeah.
Okay. all right.
no grading.
No grading. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. mhm.
Could you just add, if you don't mind, add to that without permission or without further review by your commission? Because I don't want that sounds to me like it's just cut and dry, point blank, no activity. But there is an option that they could come back to the commission for further review in the future.
There shall be no activity within 75 feet of the surrounding wetlands without further review by the Inland Wetlands Agency of the town.
Thank you.
All right, other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye. Okay,
I want to go back to the olden days.
these things.
Go back to the olden days. Too old to,
That's pretty funny.
Thank-
One more.
thank- Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Hey, I brought you a copy of a report. I think he's gone.
No, I'm back. You did? You found one?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
We're
I'll
gonna
have to-
scan it and send it to you.
Oh, boy, what an embarrassment.
Yeah, I
Don't
don't
anybody
think
look?
you'll be able to see it, but yeah.
No,
Can you
actually, I
see
would love
this?
to, I would love to see it, and I will get in touch with Dave Pasqualini and we'll
No,
have a
okay,
beer,
I don't know
we'll
if
have
you
a
can see
beer and
it.
read it.
Can't read it.
Yeah, we'll get it to you.
All right, great. Thank you. Everyone have a Merry Christmas. Take care.
Merry
Thank
Christmas.
You too.
Bye.
All right, Campbell Oak Barn. Campbell Road Oak Barn.
oh,
So that was mine too. So the applicant has asked for a 65-day extension, which will bring her to the beginning of March in 2023 to finish up the work on her plans.
I have no problem with that.
Do we have to make a motion or anything?
No.
No, okay.
No, She's just consented to it. That's, yeah.
Okay,
We have a motion on that or
Nope, don't need one.
don't need one, huh?
You don't have to approve it. She's just given it, so.
Yeah. All right. I don't really have anything going on at the moment, but Eunice does.
I do. What else is new? I just keep talking away here. Talk this much. Anyway, I want to thank the town for sending me to this conference, the 45th annual meeting. Annie and I went down, we went with the Conservation Commission member who was really nice and awesome. We carpooled. We didn't know each other, but he called me up, found my number. I'm like, okay, anyway, no problem. First of all, I just always want to go on record. You guys are great coming along, but I always want to go on record as saying that Deb rocks. She seriously rocks. And you go to a conference like this and you see other wetland people there and you realize what a gift Deb is in terms of staff to us and has been for a really long time. It's going to be a hard act to follow. Anyway.
They are going to be ready.
Well, we're just, yeah. So there were some just main points that, in my opinion, just kept being reiterated. The first was, they were looking back at 50 years of the inland wetlands regulations being, brought on. So their first thing was DEP needs to get back in the game. Apparently DEP is very understaffed, seriously understaffed. So that was one of their biggest thing. They feel that enforcement needs to be ramped up. This is something that I think that we've been fortunate with. We seem to be strong enough that when we say something, people listen, but apparently that's not the case in other towns in the state. They felt strongly that certain rivers and streams should be designated with an increased upland review area. So that was an interesting concept that just really resonated with me. And also, again, pertinent to our town is that Long Island feeders should also have, maybe have a change in zoning regulations to protect them a little bit more. The other issue that came up, and Deb knows that this is a little thing that, even though I am a farmer, my daughter's a farmer, I love farming, but that farming as of right is abused, that the definition is too strong, and that really needs to be tweaked up. They also felt strongly that the push for affordable housing, which we all want affordable housing, will definitely be putting pressure on inland wetlands agencies in the towns in Connecticut. And the other thing they talked about was that many inland wetlands agency members have zero training.
have what?
Zero training.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
And so they're talking about requiring people to,
That's tough.
attend something. It's very tough. Yeah,
That's
because as we know, it's hard to get people to even serve, let alone,
Yeah.
ask
When you
them.
tell people
Yeah.
they have to, then
That's right.
people say, well, I don't have to volunteer.
As of 2023, planning and zoning has to.
Is that right?
Oh,
You do.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, it seems, it's just that, when you really think about what we do, I mean, we're making regulatory decisions that really impact a lot of people. And so anyway, I'm just bringing this forward, just, I like to just share. The other thing they talked about, they really felt that the old stormwater control measures are outdated and they're really no longer working. And so they really, again, I don't think this is at a town level that we can necessarily do anything, but they spoke a lot about coastal towns, which obviously we are. There's going to be a lot of change in what's called tidal and what's called inland wetlands. So there's going to be a lot of jurisdictional changes, which I think is worthy of note. again, stormwater management not reliable into the future. What's the lifespan of the structure? We don't have, there was a little bit of this tonight. We don't seem to be, at least in my mind. But a lot of people apparently have a lot of trouble with adjacent property owners. So there'll be a wetland application that comes in and they're not able to really get the full view, if you will. And I mean, people have they talked about using drones, and there's a lot of legal advice like, no, don't do that. Yeah, but a lot of people struggle with that. They reiterated with strong terms that intermittent streams and water courses are wetlands and should be permitted as such. And again, farming determination, the determination of exemption should be happening before activity. You can't just do something because it's a farm. And I think I'll just stop there. That was the basic gist of it, but it was, I just really thought it was a great conference. I really was happy I went, and I'm gonna go again here.
I'm hoping I can go again.
Yeah, I mean, it really energized me. I liked it a lot. Anyway.
Did you?
I don't think we've seen it,
No.
but
I don't even
What
know
did
if I
you take
did.
but literally,
What is it?
the online training, but literally there is one person at DEP.
That's exactly right. One person. I didn't want to say that because I thought it can't be true. That's what they said.
Despite the fact that I understand that DEP is short of people, okay? I was just looking, I have a bunch of students graduating, and I was just looking for jobs and all, and there was hardly any jobs, okay, cited, okay, on the DAS website, okay, for them. So if they may be short of people, but they ain't hiring, okay?
They're not hiring, right? But what does that mean? That the state's not hiring? Is that?
Oh, yeah, there's
Well, it
state-
all
that's
goes
what
through
your state does.
DAS, it all
Yeah.
goes through DAS, and so if you can go to their website and you can see what jobs are available. Okay, for people who are, I was looking at, for people who are not currently working in the state, and there were very few jobs advertised from deep.
And so
yet I
what
know
happened to
they're
that whole
out there
structure?
hiring.
What was the?
As people retired or moved on, they
Oh, yeah.
just weren't filled. I mean, I know when I first started here, there were 7 or 8 people.
That's what they were
in
saying.
Inland water section.
Right.
There was a devoted enforcement section. And then there were 3, 4, 5 environmental analysts under one supervisor. They would routinely help review plans for small towns.
I remember when I was on the other side of the table,
Yeah.
we called them and they did environmental assessments and, it was just like,
Literally, there's one person there now.
And so-
As of last June, there's a major contract change, a state contract change. And a lot of people
Yep.
retired, half the state force retired. And you can go to my school, you're gonna hardly find them,
and so is there a way, so how can that be,
Okay.
how can we change that? How can we help change that? Is there any way?
On the state level,
Someone-
yeah,
Contact your rep.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, contact your rep, yeah.
and I have to say, like, everything that you said, coming from Rhode Island, 100% the same.
Is that right?
No enforcement, no staff, people retiring, not rehired. It's across the board. So it's happening over there too.
Well, I mean, look at Stonington,
Yeah, Stonington. Oh, boy. Holy.
across the street,
Oh, yeah. what's the time?
they have all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, how about you, Andy? Did you have anything you wanted to add from that meeting?
No, I just enjoyed it.
That was a very nice summary. Thank you.
Yeah.
Over the years, they've had some really great meetings.
And for what it's worth, I mean, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, you guys changed your regulations to increase upland review
I
areas
know.
on a number of name streams.
Yep,
So,
I know.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I prefaced with starting, thank you to you, because we really,
You can do it locally.
we are really in great shape. I mean, we're.
Groton
we're in
is
great
generally
shape.
ahead of the curve.
And so I just feel,
And that's because of all you guys.
Well, we do a little bit. We've been on this forever.
When you said 50 years, I was thinking, oh my God, I got on, it was only 15 years of
I
wetlands.
know, right? Isn't that insane?
That is insane. All right. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second it.
When's our next meeting? Just for,
January.
I gotta know that, what number?
11.
11.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
Aye.
So done.
See you, Courtney.
Bye-bye.
Good night.